Hey, my name is Gina Rose, and I'm on staff with Inheritance of Hope. And I am here today with Dr. Jen Thomas, who is a psychologist, an author, and also a longtime friend of Inheritance of Hope. And I'm super excited that she's here with us today because I think she has some really important things to share about how to live intentionally in your family. And so, Jen, I just want to ask you to tell us a little bit about yourself and to tell us a little bit about your connection with Inheritance of Hope.
All right. So I'm a psychologist in North Carolina, and about 8 years ago, Meredith McDaniel, one of my counselor friends, had posted on social media about an Inheritance of Hope legacy retreat that she took. And I thought it looked fantastic. I loved the mission of the organization and the way that she was connecting with the families that she had helped to serve. And a couple months later, she put out an appeal to 8 counselors, including myself, inviting us to get involved with the organization. She asked us to get back to her quickly, and I was ready to go. I had been waiting for an opportunity like that. And it was funny because she said she heard back from all 8 of us by lunchtime that day, and we all said yes. So it's been a great organization for me to be involved with. I've met the most wonderful families through the legacy retreats that I've been on, and I'm excited about this e-reunion and being able to connect with families that I've already met and some new ones as well.
Awesome. Well, you are also connected to someone that we all kind of know, but we don't know that we know him. And that's Dr. Gary Chapman, who is the author of The Five Love Languages. We're going to show a clip here in a second of you kind of explaining the need for speaking someone else's love language. And this is from a talk that you did for a military group, I think, right? Is that right?
That's right. This military group asked me to come and talk to their families who had gone through deployments or were facing another deployment because they want their relationships to be as strong as possible. They know the stress that military life can bring for them, and they knew that I work with people on communication and helping to maximize their personal relationships. And so they brought me in. I did this extended Zoom session with them and hopefully gave them some tips that they could use that very day with their own families.
Great. Well, let's watch this little clip where you explain why this is so important.
And I have an example. So this is a box of cookies, and for the purposes of this example, we're going to pretend that they're Girl Scout cookies. And what I want to say about that is that most people like most types of Girl Scout cookies. Now, this blue box here reminds me of the old trefoils. I don't even remember what they're called these days, but I like them the best. They're shortbread and buttery and light, and that's my go-to thing. And if I was going to buy Girl Scout cookies for my loved ones, I would probably buy this one for them. But if I had done an assessment, I would know that most of them prefer Thin Mints. And so we have a mismatch there. And if I'm trying to speak love to them, they might wonder why I keep giving them these trefoils. And it's the same way with the love languages, where most of us like all of them, but the key is not to leave out the love language that they're waiting to hear. And so I want you to tuck that away in your heads and just check yourself and make sure that you're not giving what you like, but you're giving what they like. And this is important in both directions. One is they want to get what they like and appreciate. But the other is that I, as the giver, can get frustrated if I'm knocking myself out, spending a lot of money. I could buy a mountain of trefoils for my family, and they're not going to appreciate it. They're going to act like I haven't done anything for them. And so that's where, as a marriage counselor and as a business coach, I see this mismatch where people are just missing it with each other. And so my passion is to help people to find ways to keep each other's love tanks full. And the first step in doing that is to make sure that you're speaking the right language. And that's why we call them love languages, because really it can be like you're from a foreign country if you don't get it at all. And some people do speak different dialects. Also, you might not just have one language. We find sometimes people have two or possibly three that are really tops for them, and that's okay. Everybody, may change over time as well. So it may be that you used to have just one preference, but now there's a second one as you go through a new life stage that really means a lot to you. That actually happened to me as a young mom. I used to most want words of affirmation, but once we had little kids and I really needed the help and I was completely overwhelmed, I found that acts of service became my primary love language. And I imagine there might be others of you who can relate to that life stage thing.
So this really does require living intentionally is kind of the word I would think of here. And by the way, I'm a Thin Mints girl too, just keeping it real.
Good.
But yeah, good to know, right? Just in case. So being aware of your own language and learning the language of others, that's the intentionality that I'm talking about here. So we're going to watch another clip from the same presentation that you did where you really spell out the love languages and give some really specific examples. And I'm just wondering if there's anything that would be helpful for us to really listen for as you kind of expound on these 5 love languages.
Right. The examples that you're going to hear are for different types of family relationships. There are a number of them that have to do with couples and some that have to do with kids. And so as you listen to them, I would say don't get stuck in the details of the example. So most of them could apply to kids as well as to adults. The key thing is to just be creative and thinking about things that you can do today or tomorrow before you get busy and carry on with other things, making it practical, applying the examples to a variety of relationships. And then I think it's also very important to add it to your to-do list. Don't let time get away from you, but go ahead if someone needs words of affirmation, get out the note card and try to do that today so that you can really speak those love languages and help others who are near you to keep their love tanks full.
Awesome. Let's watch this.
Okay, so what are Gary Chapman's 5 love languages? We're going to go through these and take our time and go over some examples with them as well. So our first one is words of affirmation, and this is about giving compliments. And for them, that really is the most effective way to communicate how you feel about them. So use your words, whether it's in speaking or in writing to them. And I'm going to speak here to the men in our audience because they often will come up and ask me for specific examples of what they can do for the special person in their life. And they don't want to have to translate an idea into actual words. It means the most to them if I can give them a template or a script. And I can relate to that. I'm not a poet myself, and sometimes I like borrowing the words of others. So I want to give you listeners today complete permission to write down things that you hear that you think might be useful. And if it matches what's in your heart, to use it as your own. So here are some ideas for using words of affirmation. You can send them a text and let them know how much you miss them and say specifically that you are thinking of them. And then if you can add some other words that are true, like you've changed my life for the better, you're the light of my life, which is an old song, hopefully not too corny. I don't know what I would do without you. All of those are going to underscore your sincerity. Another idea is to write a sweet and romantic little note of encouragement and then hide it in their pocket for them to randomly find. Or if it's a woman, you could hide it in her purse, something that will brighten her day while she's out and about. Next, you can give them a compliment or give them 10 compliments. Tell them how wonderful they are, how proud you are of them, and how they are the most special person you know. And also, it's nice if you can find things that you think are attractive about them. And it might even be something like their eye color. It doesn't have to be, I like that outfit or you look beautiful. Being more specific usually carries more weight. Another idea is to surprise them with a card and hand it to them for no reason except that you loved them and you wanted to tell them. So you could write in there something like, "We've been shut in together for so long," or if you're not in that boat, you could say, "I've really been missing you as you or I have been off serving and helping others, and I'm really proud of you and what you're doing. And I admire you for your strength that you're showing during this battle." And next, say thank you and tell them how much you appreciate them. A thank you goes a long way, and it's really kind of the other side of the coin of just giving general words of appreciation. But if you'll say thank you along with that, it's going to carry more weight. All right. And I've collected some specific examples over the years. This one that I have says, if your spouse has a particular parking spot, which these days might be right in front of your apartment or house, grab some sidewalk chalk and get creative. You can write them a note that says, "Welcome home. We love you." You could also give them an invitation to an evening out, maybe outdoor dining or a picnic, and you could write the instructions along the sidewalk like a billboard, letting them know what you have planned. Or maybe you want to simply tell the world how wonderful the person in that parking spot is. So you could write world's best husband, world's best dad, world's best mom. I know it's subtle, but it might make them smile. All right, our second love language is acts of service. Now, it might be cliche for people who think that actions no, it might be a cliche, but for many people, actions do speak louder than words. And so for this person, they're going to know that you really love them if you'll put your money where your mouth is, or put your time and invest that in doing something that will help to lighten their load. So sure, it's nice to hear how someone feels, but being considerate, helpful, and thoughtful is what really speaks volumes to these people. So you could offer to run an errand for them, especially if it's one that they don't enjoy doing. Or you could say, "Honey, I'm going to cook dinner tonight. Don't worry about it. I've got it." Surprise them by offering that before they get busy cooking. You could even, if you have a patio, you could take it outdoors to get some fresh air. And then be sure that you do the cleanup after dinner or as you're cooking as well. Also, with us being in shutdown, there are a lot more chores to go around. So I think acts of service is especially important right now. And we need to rebalance our chores around the house. For example, there are a lot more dishes to wash now. If you have people like I do who have come back to isolate with you. We used to only run our dishwasher a couple of times a week, but I find now I'm running it every day. Or if you are someone who doesn't have a dishwasher, but you're hand washing dishes, you may be sick and tired of that. And so I want to say to the husband or the person in your life, let's spread the load of doing the dishes around and set it up as a chore that's going to be better divided. What I've done in my family is I have each child is responsible for setting the table, saying our mealtime prayer, and helping until all the cleanup is done. And they are each listed 2 days a week. And it's hard for me to remember who has which day, but I can just go open the cupboard where the piece of paper is with the list. And then everyone knows that it's their expectation, and I get some more help that way. Another thing you might do is think about how schedules are working now that many people have summer changes plus shutdown changes. So if your wife, for example, is not a morning person, but she usually gets up and makes something for kids to have for breakfast, I would suggest that you let her know one night that you're going to start taking that on, either as a regular habit or just for the next morning. And then set your alarm earlier and do that thing that that she usually does in terms of making breakfast and cleaning up for that. Also, if they're feeling overwhelmed, you could give them a break by asking what's on your to-do list and how can I split this up with you? And another idea is to surprise them by getting their car washed and detailed. And there are mobile people who will come around and do that now, which could be a great surprise. All right, and nobody likes to get sick, but when you have somebody to take care of during those times, it makes the days brighter if you have some help. And also, if you have a friend or a family member nearby who's feeling sick, I recommend that if you can do it safely, that you prepare to drop by and bring them some sandwiches or a good book that they can read. And you can let them know that you're coming, and if so, we recommend that you knock on the door, and if they have a glass door, you can actually talk through that or crack it a little bit if you need that in order to hear. You all could even pull up chairs on the opposite sides of that glass patio door so that you all can visit and have some of the quality time that is so important. And a suggestion for parents, if your kids do have chores that they've been doing regularly, you might surprise them one day by offering to do their chores for a day or for a week to help them out. All right, next on our list is receiving gifts. So if your love language is receiving gifts, this doesn't mean that you are spoiled or materialistic in any way. I want to clear this up because we got this question on the Chapman team just this week. A woman shared that, I don't know if it's her boyfriend or her husband, had accused her of being materialistic because that was her primary love language. And I rushed to her defense and I said, look, that's also my primary love language. And it doesn't necessarily show up in me expecting things from other people, but I have a habit or I'm known for carrying something to other people, especially if they're sad, hurting, or sick. I usually don't want to go empty-handed. I want to give a gift that shows that I'm really thinking about them and I care about them and that I took some time out of my day to hopefully convey that message to them. And so I encourage everyone to be thinking about what little gifts can you make. You don't have to go out and buy things, and the malls are probably closed anyway. But what can you do as a token of your affection for that person? Okay, so a few examples for giving gifts. One is to surprise them with some tickets to an event that's still happening. These days, I understand there are some drive-in concerts and events that are still on the calendar. So you might surprise your loved one by looking into that and doing the legwork, especially if they usually do that for the family. Next, pay attention to the things that they mention they want by keeping a secret list on your phone or somewhere where you can see it. I do this on my calendar. I will go and write things on the date that their birthday's coming up, or on Christmas, I'll write under December 25th a list of ideas that I've noticed during the year that maybe the person asked for, but more likely that I just noticed could be helpful to them. For example, last year I liked some of these hanging swings that people are putting in the corner of their bedroom or the corner of their porch. And so I jotted down that idea, and then when the holidays approached, I ended up buying those for several people. And that's been a popular gift, especially as we've been kind of stuck in our homes or in our yards these days. Okay, next is randomly surprise them with small gifts and things that might be useful to them. So I just think it pleases people when we say, you know, I noticed that your trash can lid wasn't working. And it's a little weird to give a trash can, but actually that's a real example. I did that with my sister because hers had a foot pedal, but it wasn't working. And so I just ordered one and had it delivered to her house and let her know that it was from me. And it seems to have been appreciated. Another idea is to go in on gifts with other family members And we did that in our family with my dad. He had one of those big box TVs, not like a flat panel, but literally a box, if you remember those. And he was kind of nursing it along, and it didn't have any smart features to it. And so 2 years ago for the holidays, all of us kids chipped in and got him a new flat screen TV and also installation, because we know he doesn't like to drill into walls or brick, and that it probably would stay in the box if he didn't have someone to put it up for him. But it's been fun to call him on times when they're watching a movie or something like that, and he will still comment on what a nice upgrade that was. And don't tell him, but we're thinking about another group gift for him for his birthday coming up in September. He still has the lawnmower that we used back when I was in high school. And my brother suggested that we might upgrade him to one of these electric lawnmowers that has a battery pack and is very quiet. And my husband has one of those sets as well, and it's been great and very easy to use. So we're jumping on that idea for his next gift. All right. Couple more gift ideas. This is one where you can combine two of the love languages. So if you're making a gift or buying a gift that says how wonderful the person is, you also get credit for words of affirmation. And this could be as simple as taking a plain mug and getting a Sharpie or some paint pens or whatever you might have and decorating the mug with a message that they'll like. And this could be similar to what you would write if you use colored chalk on their parking space. Something like number 1, dad, number 1, husband, hugs and kisses like XOXO, just something to help him feel like he's the man of the day or she's the man of the day. And here's a personal note that I got from someone about giving gifts. She said, my boyfriend and I are in college, and unfortunately, we don't get a lot of time to catch up with each other. We started putting little sticky notes and little flowers that we picked from outdoors in each other's mailboxes. It's a cute, cost-efficient, college-friendly way of saying, I love you. I was trying to think if I had other examples of gifts. Yeah. So here's one. You can give people games these days. So this one is called the Ungame. And because of the slowdown, I've tended towards giving more gifts lately. For one of my nieces, she's only 8, but some gift ideas that we sent them were a slip and slide for playing in the hose around their area and not having to go to a big pool. And we also sent some games that they could play in the house. Like we enjoyed a game called Set, which is kind of a brain puzzler game. And I'm trying to remember the other game we sent them. Oh, we love Rummy Cube. I don't know if people have played that, but that's a lot of fun. And don't forget about like Texas Hold'em Poker. We've been playing that a couple of evenings with our college student who came home. All right, moving on to quality time. And this is really about giving your partner your undivided attention above all other things. So if this is your partner's love language, they are not as interested in flowery language or declarations of your love. They really want to see your actions, similar to acts of service. And specifically, they want to see how you prioritize making time with them and focusing on the relationship that you have. So some things you could do are to make a reservation for dinner somewhere special, just the two of you. You could set aside some time every night where you both put your phones away and catch up on your day. And with this, I don't like to call it talking time. Gary Chapman and I have gone to calling this listening time because we're really not very good at listening. But that's what I want you to do, is to say to your partner, it's important to me to hear about what's going on for you, and maybe some of the thoughts or feelings in your head that you don't usually get down to that place of sharing. I call it the bottom of the barrel for me, and it almost takes a long car trip for me to get to those little thoughts or worries that don't seem worth bringing up in the busyness of daily life. But this is a time for you to invite them to really catch you up on things. Also, you could stop and share a cup of coffee or tea together in the morning. No rushing, no telephones. You see that theme here, and just focusing on each other. Next, you could surprise them with a day trip you've planned just for the two of you or just for your family. And this is a great time to try to go to a park if it's not too crowded, or go to a lake in your area. There's one near us here in North Carolina that I had visited, but my family hadn't. And so I rounded them up, which it takes almost like an act of Congress to get them all in the car to go somewhere together. But we went there 2 weeks ago, and we're able to do a little bit of both swimming and boating. And I think the change of scenery was really good for us. So I invite you to say to your wife or your partner, let's blow this joint. Let's get out of here, hit the road, and you can tell them where you're going, or just let them know it's going to be a surprise. But for this, you would just carry some towels, some snacks, some sunscreen, and you're in for a good day of making memories together. And if their love language is quality time, filling their love tank as well. Next, I'd suggest that you have some mandatory snuggle time. And this goes in also with physical touch, which I'm going to get to last. But this is time for you to be present with each other and to let them know that what they have to say and what they're happy about, or maybe there's a joke or a video or a meme that they've been enjoying recently. Sit down, have this snuggle time, and ask them to share maybe something that's been making them laugh, so that you all can enjoy that quality time and that laugh together. Next, if you've been together with your love for more than a few years, consider recreating your first date. If you did it wrong the first time, or if it was not a great memory, then make it right this time around. If you did it right, try to make it even better. Now, of course, you may not be in the same town, or that restaurant may not be there anymore, but you could pretend that it's the restaurant, or make signage for whatever you did that night if you went to a restaurant or a movie. And then for added fun with this, you could try to find and wear similar outfits and hairstyles from whatever decade that was. All right. Along with this, looking to spend some quality time with your spouse or partner, we suggest that you schedule a classic movie night, or maybe watch some musicals together. And this one can also be good for the whole family. I was surprised to hear from my daughter recently that she didn't know the story of Cinderella or Snow White. And she said that it was because I hadn't shown those to her. And it may be that I didn't, or it may be that she was younger and had forgotten them. But it might be that your kids or your partner has some classic musicals that they would enjoy. And along those lines, let me give a plug for Hamilton. We watched that. It took us 2 Friday nights, but we really enjoyed streaming that. It's on Disney Plus. This is not an ad for them, but it worked out really easily. And it's not entirely kid friendly, so do consider your audience. I would say, so my youngest is 14. There were a couple of times that I cringed, so I would say maybe ages 15 or 16 and up. And try to make it an event for the family. Pop some popcorn, pile in, get the blankets, get the dog if you have one. And I know more of you have dogs than you used to, because I know people are adopting them, and just build some memories together. Moving on, our 5th love language and final one is physical touch. So if physical touch is your love language, then the way you feel really close to someone is to literally be physically close. So these people want most to feel affirmed, loved, and appreciated. And when their partner lavishes physical affection on them, that's when they know that the other person really cares about them. So hugs, kisses, snuggles, all the good stuff really matters to them. And with this one, I want to say as an aside that men often think physical touch is their primary love language. But here we're not just talking about things in private. We are talking about liking to hold hands. And so if you don't like to hold hands, this probably isn't actually your primary love language. So here are some examples for those of you like my husband who swears that this is his main love language. First, give them a back or foot massage after a long day. Next, always greet them with a hug and a kiss. And then the same goes when they're leaving the house. Um, be be willing to spoon if you're laying down with them, whether it's to watch a movie or if this is your partner, if you sleep with them. Just remember that to them, every minute that you are touching them is a moment that there's a deposit being made in their love tank. You can also reach over and rub their back or their neck. Um, I like rubbing his back when he's working at the computer. Um, I'll usually ask, is it an okay time? But he rarely turns me down on that. Or if he's driving, you could reach over and rub his neck. Also, if you all are walking together, remember they want touch. And so don't always make them be the one who reaches over and grabs your hand. Surprise them by asking for that touch and reaching for their hand. All right. And my last example on this one is, when was the last time that you did something physical together with your spouse? So it's time to break a sweat. Go to the gym together, take a hike, or maybe even play some games in your house that might cause you to break a sweat. An example of that would be playing Twister with each other.
All right, so that's the 5 love languages. So Jen, just review with us, what exactly are the 5 love languages, if we're just naming them off?
Okay, so the first one is quality time. Next is words of affirmation, then giving or receiving gifts, acts of service, and finally, physical touch.
Awesome. So are there any helpful examples for this group of people sitting right now watching this presentation?
Yeah, I want to personalize it to our e-legacy retreat audience. And I want to also talk about the time frame that we're in now. So we're doing this pandemic thing and we're inexperienced with it. None of us have lived through a pandemic before. And I do think that being shut in with our family members as we are and cut off from other people presents some real challenges. And I think especially of our families who have a family member who is immune compromised, and where that can increase the anxiety for the whole family and also increases the sense that we have to shut our doors and remain shut off from the world just for our safety. And so I do have concerns about, well, what does that do to us getting or being able to receive our love languages? For example, my primary love language is the same as Gary Chapman's, and that's words of affirmation. And so we were about a month into the shutdown when I realized that I was missing the interactions I usually get with other women. And I realized that I run on compliments a lot more than I realized I did. And it was only when I noticed, oh, I'm not having those interactions. I'm not giving or receiving, hey, I love your shirt. I love your necklace. Great job with that. Because within our own home, it's more what they call management by exception, which is I'll let you know when I take exception to what you're doing, rather than telling each other what we're doing right. it's kind of like we don't hear anything unless someone doesn't like what we're doing. So I want to challenge our Inheritance of Hope families to go the extra mile with finding things to compliment and offering those words of affirmation to the people who are shut in with you.
Yeah, and I would imagine that's true for other love languages too. Like I'm thinking of physical touch, like with all the social distancing that we have, and not being able to really even like fist bump somebody out in public. Like, what do you do if you're a
Right.
hugger, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, that's probably a huge felt need for a lot of people. We know that we get hormones released when we are touching, and we need that oxytocin. And there are probably people who are feeling that on a daily basis. So that's a great point. Do what you can to reach out and touch someone near you. Those people who are in your pod are really depending on you to meet those needs that we usually get met through other people as we go out and see others.
Yeah.
And Gina, I was going to ask, do you know what your love language is?
I do. It's also words of affirmation.
Okay. And have you noticed a shortage of those words during the last 6 months?
No doubt. No doubt. Yes.
Okay. Well, Gina, I think you're doing a great job with this.
Well, thank
I
you.
love how you're on top of this and bringing together these educational materials. You rock.
You know, I was going to say the same thing to you, how you brought this whole thing together and just, on the fly answering these questions. You're doing a great job.
Well,
I know. Take it in.
thank you.
Awesome. Well, you've also worked with Gary Chapman, the author of The Five Love Languages, because you brought something to the table, to his table, in a sense, of an expertise that he had not really considered in a bigger picture. And I would love for you to kind of tell us more about that, and kind of set up, because you did a TED talk even on this. And I would love for you to kind of
Mhm.
set up kind of what you have developed from the five love languages to take it to a kind of a next level.
Okay. So I knew Gary Chapman a bit through just networking over the years. We were on a first name basis, but we didn't know each other well. And then there was a situation in my own marriage where I was apologizing to JT, my husband, but he wasn't having it. He wanted to hear something besides "I'm sorry," which is kind of my reflexive apology. And so I asked JT what he wanted to hear instead of "I'm sorry." And he knew right away. And before I tell you all what it was, I want you to stop and think, hey, what do you think this guy wanted instead of "I'm sorry"? Because your answer will probably show something about what your script is for a really good apology. So JT's answer was, I wanted to hear you say you were wrong. And I said, oh, well, that's what I meant when I made the mistake. And I said, I was sorry. To me, those were kind of synonyms. But to him, there was a world of difference. And now that I've studied it, I get it more, because I can be sorry something happened to you without taking one iota of responsibility for it. And I was shocked by what a difference it made in JT's mood when I used the words "I was wrong." And I thought, gosh, this man should have come with an instruction manual. I wish I had known this years ago. We could have shortened up some disagreements. And so I literally wrote it down as a best practice for myself to remember. And at that time, he and I were doing some mentoring of couples at our church who were engaged. And so the next time we went to share with them, we told them, look, you probably have learned each other's love languages, but we're going to have you break into dyads now and talk about what constitutes an acceptable apology for them. Because if you two haven't had an argument yet, you surely will on your wedding day. So let's go ahead and figure out, what are those magic words? And we believe that everyone has them. Um, they're part of a script that come from our childhood. It's usually what your parents or what your teachers required before they would let you out of the doghouse. And that's now an expectation that you carry around. And so I saw that there was a parallel with the five love languages where the other person is waiting to receive something, but you just offer what's quick and easy or usual for you and check it off and try to move on. And you may not realize that you're missing it with each other, like I was missing it with JT. And so I got curious about whether Gary Chapman had ever thought of this parallel between the love languages and apology preferences. And so I went and I shared the idea with him. And he leaned back in his chair and he said, I've never thought of this, but I definitely see the relationship between the two. And so we began to do some research and we looked into what else do people want to hear in apologies. And we found that there were 5 things that people wanted. Now,
Of course, there are
um,
5.
of course, yeah, we we didn't expect 5, but those 5 have held up pretty well over time. It's been 14 years now that we've been working on this together, and we've written "When Sorry Isn't Enough," laying out those different ways of basically saying "my bad." And what he said to me as our book was being released is, Jennifer, this isn't just one more book for me, but this has changed what I'm teaching about. I really see the love languages and the apology languages together as essential things for people to have in order to keep their relationships afloat.
Yeah. So let's watch this little clip from your TED Talk where you are kind of expounding more on what the 5 languages of apology are.
When it comes to apologies, the key word is sincerity. We want to know, do they really mean this, or are they just trying to get this behind us? And I told him that I was struck by the similarity between this need to match up our apologies with what they expect and the need to match up love languages with what they expect. Then I waited for his reaction. To my relief, he really resonated with the idea. He said, yes, for any relationship to last beyond the initial infatuation stage, people have to be able to apologize. And about a few months later, he gave me this endorsement. He said, Jennifer, what you have brought to my attention, along with the love languages, I would call the other essential for happy, healthy relationships. So we teamed up for some research that became our book, When Sorry Isn't Enough. To date, we've asked 45,000 people, what do you most want to hear when people apologize? And a second question, when people apologize to you, what do you expect them to say or do? You might want to make a mental note of these questions because they're good ones for you to use in your own life. Now, their answers fell into 5 categories. And I promise we weren't looking for 5, although we know he really likes that number. And we coined the term apology languages for these 5 different ways of saying, my bad. Each one is a separate key. Now, if you have a key and it unlocks a door, you might be tempted to use that on every door. But that would be foolish and would only end up in frustration. It's the same way with our apology languages. Now, I'm going to share with you percentages on how popular each of our 5 apology languages are. This data is hot off the press for our event today. The first apology language is expressing regret. 40 people most want to hear us say, I'm sorry, but that is not a complete sentence. It's important that we give detail about their feelings, how we've made them feel sad, angry, frustrated, worried. They need to know that we really get it. And if it's just a small offense, that may be enough. But if it's something that's either serious or repeated, they're really going to want to hear their apology language. It might be something like our second language, accepting responsibility. 37% of people most want to hear us say, I was wrong. See, I've been practicing. Now, this is really hard for some people to say. We find especially people who come from a family of origin, or we call it FOO in psychology speak, the kind that put the fun back in dysfunction. They may have been told all the time, not just what they did wrong, but that they were bad, bad, bad. And they learned to cover up their mistakes. The fact is, we all make mistakes. Our third language of apology is making restitution or making amends. 10% of people really want us to ask them, what can I do to make this right? For them, talk is cheap. They want to see action. Our fourth one is revising the plan. 10% of people also want to hear us say, what's going to be different going forward? They want to know that we've put some time and effort into making a better plan. This didn't work. So we should tell them, okay, this is a new insight I have about where I went off track or how much I dislike the situation. We can't promise we won't make a mistake, but here's my best plan for preventing us from ending up in this bad spot again. And our final language of apology is the request for forgiveness. 3% of people most want to be asked that question. Will you please forgive me? Now you may be saying, Jennifer, I've never asked that question. That would never even pop into my head. But the fact is, for people who as children were expected to ask that question, they're going to expect that of us. And if we don't ask them, they may feel like we're holding out on them. Or we were just getting warmed up for a great apology. Why did we stop? So those are our 5 languages of apology. As you can see, you simply can't guess what's going to speak to a person. And if you're talking to someone you don't know what their apology language is, or if you're giving an apology to a group, we recommend that you use all 5. Now, I do blogging about apologies in the media, and I find that public figures use all 5 of these only 1% of the time. Lots of bad language about those, yes. Mistakes were made. To the extent that you were offended, we apologize. I had such a good time analyzing apologies by Tiger Woods, Lance Armstrong, and any number of baseball players.
I mean, that is such a clear explanation of the 5 languages of apology. So, Jen, if you can just review for us, what are the 5?
Okay, taking it from the top, the first one is expressing regret or saying, I'm sorry. Next is accepting responsibility or saying, I was wrong. Third is making restitution or making amends. And this is about making the person whole again or fixing the damage that you've done. Fourth is genuinely repenting. And this one is talking about what's going to change going forward. How are you going to be able to prevent this mistake or this problem from happening over and over in the future? And the last one is actually a question, and that's, will you please forgive me?
Awesome. These are, some of them are really hard. So we're going to watch the end of your TED Talk. It's just a few minutes, and I just want to set this up in terms of, this is sort of geared toward people who are business minded. In other words, TED Talks typically are for people in the business world. But when we come back, I really want us to draw it back to families and family relationships. So let's watch this, the ending of your TED Talk.
All right.
Give me a nod if you've ever been hit by one of these phrases. We can't do anything about it now. You're too sensitive. It's time to move on. Why can't you just drop it? And this one's really popular. Let's let the past stay in the past. Hopefully, we can all do better than John did. Let me share a few tips with you that we've learned along the way. First, we want our body language to match up with our words. Everyone has that BS meter, and it will go off. if we seem very closed. Now, I also want you to not apologize by text. Don't you all hate that? Yeah, friends don't let friends text apologies. None of your body language is going to come through that way. And it's just too simple. It doesn't show your sincerity because it's too easy. Now, if it's a serious apology, I want you to consider writing it out and taking it and reading it to them. The time you took to write it will show them your sincerity. Also, don't let yourself get distracted, so leave that cell phone behind. And then I've narrowed it down to 3 defensive apology mistakes that people often make. Let's not blame, excuse, or deny. Those happen to spell bed. Blaming, that seems to come naturally to kids. And I know a few adults who haven't outgrown that yet. When my younger son had a Lego creation that turned up broken apart to pieces, he honed in on me as the culprit. And he said repeatedly that I was at fault. And finally, I went to him and I said, Russell, I'm tired of you blaming me for having busted your Legos. I'm sorry about it, but I didn't do it. Well, he leveled his gaze on me, and with his 5-year-old logic, he said, I'm not blaming you. I'm saying you're the one who caused it. We also need to be careful not to make excuses. Benjamin Franklin said this, never ruin an apology with an excuse. And a red flag that an excuse is coming is when we hear the word but, especially but you, right? Then we know, okay, they've stopped apologizing, and they're now blaming me for their poor actions. And we don't want to deny what we've done. We should never try to bluff our way around an apology. When people make a mistake, we admire those who admit their missteps. It is the quality of our relationships that drives our happiness in life. So when we return to those imperfect people in our world, let's commit to doing our part to make things right with others. Let's put ourselves into their shoes and give them what they really want and need. What's the payoff? Your team members will trust you. Your customers will be loyal to you. You'll be replacing discord with harmony. Your relationships will be more peaceful and productive. And you will feel glorious freedom. Now, as I've talked today, someone has come to your mind. How do I know? The hundreds of people with whom I've talked have told me so. Here's what you can do when you feel like you've already tried everything to make things right with someone. Demonstrate leadership. Make the next move. To make sure you aren't just missing it like I did with JT, use all 5 apologies in your key ring. When you look back, you will never regret it.
Okay, so as I think about love languages and I think about the languages of apology, if I think sort of in terms like a math equation, it makes me think like loving plus apologizing equals living intentionally, which when we talk about legacy, this is a really important concept. We're always at Inheritance of Hope talking about living intentionally. And so living intentionally in your family, in the middle of a pandemic, these are pretty important concepts for us to grab a hold of. And so, Jen, I just want to say, is there any like one big takeaway you wish that they could take with them, especially our Inheritance of Hope families who are watching this today? What do you want them to take with them?
All right, well, I think that it's key for us to be living out our legacy and living with the mindfulness that tomorrow isn't promised to us and that we want to do what we can each day to be creating that legacy and speaking loving words and showing love to others around us, and then resolving those conflicts that inevitably crop up. And none of us are perfect when it comes to, not stepping on others' toes, and also in terms of living with mindfulness. But what I've found from people on legacy retreats is that especially our diagnosed parents, they are living mindfully. And I have learned so much from them about um, speaking things that you don't know if you're going to have a chance to say later on. And so I think about families who have broken relationships and may have people who aren't speaking to each other. And in closing today, I just want to speak directly to people who have a broken relationship and to say, if you feel like you've already tried everything, but you realize, well, maybe I'm not sure if I know that person's apology language. My hope is that you might have gotten some tools today that you can take and offer an olive branch of peace to that person, so that hopefully you can live with intentionality in all of your relationships.
Such a great word. Thank you so much, Jen, for being here with us today. Your expertise is so appreciated, especially over all the years that we've worked together. Just so appreciate everything. I'm trying to speak your love language. No, but I really do appreciate everything that you offer Inheritance of Hope. And for those watching, thank you for all that you've put in your chat and the chat for us today. And we look forward to seeing you again in a different presentation. Thank you,
I
guys.
enjoyed it.
Thanks,
Bye.
Jen. Bye.